War as a defining force in the history of humanity. War has been a defining force in the history of humanity since the earliest stages of civilization. From primitive tribal conflicts to global wars involving dozens of nations, warfare has shaped political systems, social structures, economies, cultures, and human consciousness. Although technology, ideology, and forms of governance have changed over time, the fundamental nature of war, organized violence between groups, has remained tragically constant. In prehistoric times, conflicts arose mainly because of competition for food, water, and territory. Early human groups fought to survive, and warfare was limited in scale but brutal in nature. As societies became more complex and states began to form, wars grew larger and more organized. Ancient kingdoms developed standing armies, military strategies, and early forms of diplomacy. War became not only a means of survival, but also a tool of expansion and domination. Ancient civilizations such as Assyria, Persia, Greece, China, and Rome used warfare to build empires. The Assyrian Empire, for example, was known for its military strength and extreme cruelty, which was used to intimidate enemies. Ancient Greece experienced constant warfare between city-states, the most famous being the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. These conflicts weakened Greek civilization and demonstrated how internal wars could destroy even advanced societies. The Roman Empire perfected military organization and discipline, allowing it to dominate vast territories for centuries. Roman legions were highly trained and well-equipped, and war became a central element of Roman identity. However, endless wars also exhausted the empire, drained its resources, and contributed to its eventual decline. This shows that even the most powerful military forces are not immune to the long-term consequences of constant conflict. During the Middle Ages, war was deeply connected to feudalism and religion. Kings, lords, and knights fought for land, loyalty, and honor. Religious wars, such as the Crusades, were presented as holy missions, but they often resulted in mass violence, cultural destruction, and long-lasting hostility between different civilizations. Ordinary people suffered the most, as villages were burned, crops destroyed, and populations displaced. The invention of gunpowder marked a turning point in the history of warfare. Castles lost their defensive power, and traditional forms of combat were replaced by firearms and artillery. This technological change transformed not only the battlefield, but also political structures as centralized states gained more power. By the early modern period, wars became more expensive, more organized, and more deadly. The Industrial Revolution further intensified warfare. Factories allowed nations to produce weapons, ammunition, and military equipment on an unprecedented scale. Railways and steamships enabled faster movement of troops and supplies. As a result, wars became national efforts involving entire populations. Civilians were no longer just observers. They became targets, workers, and victims of war. The First World War marked the beginning of modern total war. Trench warfare, machine guns, poison gas, and mass mobilization led to unimaginable destruction. Soldiers lived and died in horrific conditions, often for minimal territorial gains. The psychological impact of the war was enormous, leaving many survivors traumatized. The political consequences were equally significant as empires collapsed and new states emerged. The failure to secure lasting peace after the First World War led directly to the Second World War. This conflict surpassed all previous wars in scale and brutality. It was not only a war between armies, but also a war against civilians. Strategic bombings, mass executions, concentration camps, and genocide became instruments of war. The Holocaust stands as one of the darkest crimes in human history, demonstrating the extreme dangers of hatred, racism, and authoritarian ideology. For many nations, especially those occupied or attacked, the Second World War became a struggle for survival and dignity. People resisted occupation, joined partisan movements, and supported the war effort in any way they could. Women took on new roles in factories, hospitals, and resistance organizations. Children grew up under constant fear, hunger, and loss. War transformed entire generations. The end of the Second World War did not bring an end to conflict. Instead, it marked the beginning of the Cold War, a period of ideological confrontation between major powers. Although direct large-scale battles were avoided, proxy wars, nuclear threats, and political repression defined this era. The existence of nuclear weapons created a new kind of fear, the possibility of total annihilation of humanity. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, warfare continued to evolve. Modern conflicts often involve asymmetrical warfare, terrorism, cyber attacks, and information manipulation. Advanced technology has made weapons more precise, but it has not reduced suffering. Civilian populations remain the most vulnerable, facing displacement, poverty, and long-term psychological trauma. War also leaves deep moral and ethical questions. Soldiers are forced to make impossible choices, and societies must confront the consequences of violence committed in their name. Literature, art, and philosophy have long attempted to understand and explain war, reflecting humanity's struggle to reconcile survival with morality. Studying the history of war is essential, not because war should be glorified, but because it must be understood. Memory plays a crucial role in preventing future conflicts. Monuments, museums, and historical education serve as reminders of the cost of war. Forgetting the past increases the risk of repeating the same mistakes. In conclusion, war has shaped the world we live in, but it has done so at an enormous human cost. While it has influenced technological progress and political change, it has also brought immeasurable suffering. The history of war teaches us that peace is fragile and must be actively protected. Only through dialogue, cooperation, and respect for human life can humanity hope to move beyond the cycle of violence and build a more just and peaceful future.